Once upon a time in Hollywood, there were men who embodied the very ideal of a gentleman. Their voices were deep and warm, their eyes hypnotic, their looks utterly flawless. In the 1,950 seconds, they made millions of female fans swoon, but behind the silver screen lay a secret few could ever imagine. To earn that coveted spotlight, they were forced to pay the ultimate price: their own bodies. Some were ordered to undress on the spot in hotel rooms, others were seen serving cocktails at midnight. But in reality, they were providing far more than drinks, and some were secretly filmed in the act. They were blackmailed, coerced into a lifetime of silence, terrified that a single leak could shatter their careers in an instant. No fewer than 25 of Hollywood's most celebrated leading men endured these humiliating exchanges. These were all A-list stars, their faces immortalized on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So, who were they? And why did these A-list celebrities, men who seemingly had everything, feel compelled to sell their bodies from the very start of their careers? All will be revealed. First, James Dean, the rebel angel, and the dark bargain struck during the Hollywood summer of 1951. In 1951, a 20-year-old James Dean arrived in Los Angeles, fresh from Indiana. He had no connections, no money, and no auditions. All he possessed was a strange, haunting face and an innocence that was dangerously easy to manipulate. It was precisely these qualities that caught the eye of secret talent scouts. At the Chateau Marmont Hotel, a place infamously nicknamed the After Hours, casting office for the industry's most powerful men, according to a former bartender. This bartender recalled Dean attending a private party where the young men were stripped of their names and known only by numbers. Dean was number 6. With his sad eyes and messy curls, he was a favorite. But most importantly, he was quiet. He never asked questions and never fought back. One of the first to pull Dean from the shadows was Rogers Brackett, a seasoned theater director from New York. Brackett was more than a lover. He was a sponsor, and the price Dean paid for his patronage was steep. Actress Christine White, who lived near Brackett's apartment at the time, later recalled, "I often heard Dean crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m., but by the next morning, he would show up on set as if nothing had ever happened." Following a series of these on-demand visits, Dean's career began to ascend. He was escorted to upscale parties to serve cocktails and provide other services not listed on any menu. On one such occasion, he was told to spend the night with an older investor in exchange for a television role on CBS. Dean did not refuse. He knew that getting on screen meant he could finally stop washing dishes at that diner near Sunset Boulevard. In fact, a late close friend revealed that Dean was once secretly filmed inside a Wilshire Boulevard penthouse while privately entertaining a studio executive. That tape became powerful leverage, ensuring Dean would never dare to escape the web of power that had been woven around him. From that moment on, Dean's life was not his own. What he wore, where he went, who he dated, it was all orchestrated by a group of unnamed, faceless handlers. Many believe this shadowy group was the reason Dean grew increasingly withdrawn, cold, and suspicious, like a man who constantly felt he was being watched. Dean had traded his body for fame, but what he received in return was not lasting glory. After just 3 breakout performances, his life was cut short in a mysterious 1955 car crash, just as his career was truly beginning. 2. Marlon Brando, the man who would sleep his way to the top. Brando himself declared it bluntly at a 1,975 press party. "I slept with anyone who could give me a part, male or female. It didn't matter, as long as they had power." This very quote was later cited by Vanity Fair in a 2001 special dossier on the actor, serving as damning proof of the true dark side of American cinema. Back in the 1,940 seconds, Brando was just a hustler on small New York stages when an aging director, George Cukor, essentially bought him for $300 a week in exchange for late night private line rehearsals in his luxurious Beverly Hills apartment. It was Cukor himself who later called Elia Kazan to recommend Brando, leading to his legendary casting as Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire. But Brando didn't stop with just one man. He slept with directors, producers, and even reporters, anyone who could move him closer to the spotlight. In a personal diary leaked after his death, Brando listed 14 men who had helped him with both their bodies and their money. One name on that list was none other than Jack Warner, the tycoon behind Warner Brothers, who once rescued Brando from a 1,953 sex scandal, allowing him to star in Julius Caesar. But not everyone was as fortunate as Brando. There was another man, once mentored by Brando himself, who entered the same shadowy rooms but never truly made it out. 3. Sal Mineo, the star murdered by a past he could not bury. Sal Mineo, the handsome actor who played James Dean's best friend in Rebel Without a Cause, was a star who rose fast and fell even faster. Behind the spotlight lay a past he was forbidden to ever speak of. In 1955, at just 16 years old, Sal was invited to a famous producer's private home for a personal dialogue session. He later confided in a friend. They said, "I'd get the part if I could convince them that I was soft enough." That night, Sal stayed. The next morning, his name was on the official audition list for Rebel. Sal never denied these transactions. In a 1973 TV interview, later cut from broadcast, he stated bluntly, "In Hollywood, if you don't satisfy them, they won't remember your name." After Dean's death, Sal's life spiraled. He was used, discarded, and eventually, he turned to selling his body just to survive. At one point, according to The Advocate, Mineo had exclusive arrangements with two Palm Springs directors, trading sexual favors for minor roles in B movies. By the late 60 seconds, Sal attempted to reclaim his career. He directed plays, joined independent art projects, and started speaking out about Hollywood's hidden horrors. A week before he was murdered, Sal told a CBS reporter, "I've got names, photos, tapes. If something happens to me, go find them." On the 12th of February 1976, Sal Mineo was stabbed to death outside his West Hollywood apartment. The police ruled it a robbery, yet his wallet was untouched. His watch was still on his wrist, and his briefcase, rumored to hold all the evidence he planned to expose, had vanished. Sal Mineo's death serves as a chilling reminder. Some truths will get you killed long before an audience ever hears them. And among those who stood beside him, emerging from the very same shadows, was another star, more beautiful, more famous, who spent his life in denial and in constant fear that the truth of his identity would be revealed. 4. Rock Hudson, the gentleman escort behind closed doors. Rock Hudson wasn't just a Hollywood icon, he was the premium gift at parties to which no fan was ever invited. Back in the 1,950 seconds, while still a young hopeful at Universal, Rock was placed on a list of high potential pretty boys by Henry Wilson, the most powerful manager in Hollywood, infamous for training his actors straight from the bedroom. Hudson possessed a chiseled physique, a cinematic face, and a deep, seductive voice. But it wasn't his talent that got him chosen. In a studio memo leaked in 1989, one of Wilson's former assistants had handwritten, "He's obedient, discreet, and always ready to accompany clients with just a nod from me." They called Hudson the perfect companion. He never asked who he was meeting. He never said no. From the Beverly Hills Hotel to private Palm Springs estates, Hudson always arrived with a polite smile, poured the drinks, and made charming conversation. And when required, he would walk into a bedroom without another word. A recorded phone call between Wilson and producer Ross Hunter, later published in Full Service by Scotty Bowers, once revealed, "He can handle two people a night as long as no one takes pictures. Other than that, for as long as they want." When Hudson became a sensation with films like Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession, he wasn't just the media's darling. He was also the most expensive asset at secret fundraising parties hosted by film moguls. Rumors swirled that every time Hudson appeared at one of these exclusive events, studios would secure millions in underground investments from wealthy backers. The true number of people he slept with remains unknown. But after his death, a crumpled note was discovered, bearing a haunting scribble. It read, "I was never allowed to say no," and yet he was not alone. His old companion, a man once celebrated as Hollywood's golden gentleman, had also lived this way, only with far more silence and secrecy. Number 5. Cary Grant, the perfect gentleman and the nights spent surviving on strangers. The fifth name on our list is Cary Grant, the man once hailed by the press as the husband every woman dreams of. But the truth was the stark opposite of that fantasy. For nearly 2 decades at the start of his career, Grant shared a home with actor Randolph Scott, a relationship that magazines of the era curiously labeled as inseparable companions. At their Malibu Beach mansion, the pair hosted exclusive parties for powerful directors, screenwriters, and studio financiers gatherings where, according to Scotty Bowers, the famed male escort and matchmaker to the elite, Cary Grant didn't merely entertain. He orchestrated behind the scenes exchanges. On one occasion, as recounted by a cinematographer, Grant invited 3 directors to his home, then vanished with them into a locked second floor room. A week later, he landed the leading role in Bringing Up Baby. And it didn't stop there. A leaked 1,942 memo from Columbia Pictures cited Grant's complete compliance with after hours studio arranged activities, which included providing support for the studio's key financial partners. Even after becoming a household name, Grant couldn't or wouldn't step away. Confidential magazine once investigated a 1,955 incident where Grant was spotted leaving the Biltmore Hotel at 2 a.m. with an anonymous European backer just days before signing on for Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. Perhaps that's why he married 5 times, yet never truly settled with anyone. And even as the tabloids swarmed, Grant never once responded because he knew that silence was the only thing that could keep him alive. In a Hollywood full of traps. Number 6, Clark Gable. The king of Hollywood, once kept by men. The sixth name on this list is Clark Gable. Long before he became the dashing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, and before he was crowned the king of Hollywood, Clark Gable was a young escort serving older men in Oregon. In 1922, at just 21 years old, Gable had been kicked out of his home for dropping out of school and being jobless. With nowhere else to go, he was taken in by William H. Wright, a prominent gay playwright of the era, under the guise of stage apprentice. In truth, Wright provided for Gable's every need: clothes, food, and shelter, even pocket money, all in exchange for the young man's total obedience. A former neighbor of Wright's recalled in a 1978 memoir, every Friday night, Mr. Wright would have guests. Clark would serve drinks with a smile and knew precisely when to slip away into the private room. After Wright's sudden death from a stroke, Gable moved to Los Angeles, armed with the contacts of his former benefactor. According to internal MGM records, Gable was once bailed out by a major director from a gay scandal involving a male critic, an intervention that allowed him to audition for The Painted Desert. That film became his gateway into Hollywood. As Louis B. Mayer, the MGM mogul, once sneered, Gable knows the price of a tux, and the price you pay to wear it on the red carpet. Even at the height of his fame, Gable maintained a murky relationship with George Cukor, the openly gay director of Gone with the Wind. Rumor had it that Gable influenced Cukor's removal from the project, fearing the director might expose secrets from their shared past. But while Gable chose to bury his past, the next man on our list was the kind who would compromise every single night for the chance to keep dancing on stage, even if that stage was a bedroom. Number 7, Gene Kelly, the dance legend and his shadowy footwork before stardom. In 1937, Gene Kelly was a dance instructor in Pittsburgh before he moved to New York. With just 2 suitcases and a notebook filled with the names of producers, names passed down from his former students. One of the first he met was Charles Weidman, a well-known choreographer who brought him into a private training group that lasted 6 months, a covert sexual audition pipeline for Broadway producers. Another trainee later revealed to Movie Line magazine, "We didn't rehearse. We were judged by our bodies, our obedience, and our flexibility, both on and off stage." Kelly passed this screening and was subsequently recommended to director Stanley Donen, who would become both his longtime collaborator, according to whispers, his secret lover for nearly a decade. Even after achieving fame, Kelly couldn't escape the industry's grip. Studios pressured him into attending exclusive social engagements with investors. A former Variety journalist recalled, Gene Kelly once danced the entire night at a Bel Air mansion, but there were no cameras, no stage, just 3 powerful men and a contract waiting to be signed. In a 1959 letter to a close friend, Kelly wrote, "They want me to dance for them, but no one ever asks if I'm tired, if I'm sad, or if I'm disgusted with myself." Perhaps that's why, away from the stage lights, Gene Kelly always preferred rooms without mirrors, hallways without footsteps, and silent walks into the night. Number 8, Tony Curtis. The perfect face and the role paid in flesh. Tony Curtis was the embodiment of the Hollywood dream. Strikingly handsome, sharply dressed, and a smile that silenced every casting room. But behind that polished surface, Curtis once whispered to a co star, "To get roles, I've done things that weren't in the script." In 1948, a young man from the Bronx stepped into Universal's audition room. Within 5 minutes, an elderly producer looked him up and down and said, "I think you could be a star. But first tell me, are you obedient?" That was not small talk. According to Robert Hoffler, author of The Man Who Invented Rock Hudson, Curtis once spent an entire week living in a casting director's private apartment in exchange for a role in 1949's Crisscross. It was the part that first caught the industry's attention. Curtis never denied those nights. In a 1990 interview that was later cut from the broadcast, he admitted, "I knew exactly how to use my face. It was the most valuable thing I had when I was young." By the time he starred in Some Like It Hot, the press hailed him as the heartthrob of the century. But in his private journal, Curtis once scribbled, "If people knew what I did to get this role, they'd never think I was sweet again." Number 9, Anthony Perkins. Norman Bates and the Price of a Role. Anthony Perkins was once Hollywood's darling, with his dreamy eyes, tall, slender frame, and shy, delicate voice. He was the kind of man every director wanted to reshape in their own image. Before becoming Norman Bates in Psycho, Perkins wandered through New York, surviving on prearranged meetings at the Commodore Hotel. One of his regular clients was Roy Cohn, the era's most powerful and feared attorney who connected Perkins with media moguls looking for cultured, obedient boys to entertain their guests. An anonymous industry insider told Confidential magazine in 1965 Perkins was rare. He made people feel like they were the only one. In return, they gave him roles. It was Alfred Hitchcock himself who allegedly bought out Perkins from another studio with a contract rumored to contain a secret clause requiring Perkins to remain intimately available throughout the production of Psycho. In unpublished letters to an ex boyfriend, revealed in 2007, Perkins wrote, "I'm not afraid to die for a role. I'm afraid people will find out how I had to die slowly to earn it." After Psycho, Perkins was typecast not just on screen, but in life. In 1972, he told a psychologist, "I'm no longer me. I'm a deal, a gift that was traded." Number 10, Dennis Hopper, the rebel who sold himself to stay in the game. Dennis Hopper was the embodiment of New Hollywood's wild spirit, a rebel draped in dust and defiance. He was once a young idealist, but even he confessed, "I sold my soul for a supporting role, and one night in Beverly Hills." In the mid 60 seconds, Hopper hit rock bottom, blacklisted from major projects due to his reputation for violence, insubordination, and drug use. Then one night, he received an invitation to a private casting party in a Mulholland Drive mansion where ambitious men like him could trade their bodies for a chance to get back on screen. According to director Nicholas Ray's memoir, Hopper willingly spent an entire night with an older financier in exchange for a small role in The Sons of Katie Elder. It was 1,960, and that role was the one that put him back on Hollywood's radar. Hopper's ex girlfriend, actress Brooke Hayward, once remarked that Dennis would endure anything, even profound humiliation, if it meant another chance in front of the camera. But the price of his ambition didn't end there. In a 1983 Rolling Stone interview, Hopper himself admitted, "I used to be a bastard, but before that, I was a good boy, serving rich men just to do what I loved." But where is the line drawn in these desperate bargains? The next man on our list was once dubbed America's Golden Boy, someone nobody believed could ever fall from grace. Yet his story is a chilling reminder that sometimes you don't sell your soul all at once. You sell it piece by piece, night after night, until there's nothing left of yourself to save. Number 11, Rudolph Valentino, the original Latin lover whose nights were sold not for fame, but for sheer survival. Rudolph Valentino, Hollywood's first elegant heartthrob, was adored nationwide as the Latin lover. But long before women swooned over him, Valentino had to cater to powerful men just to stay alive. According to Emily Later's 2003 biography, Valentino was working as a waiter in New York before being fired for becoming too friendly with the male clientele. He was then introduced to a secret male escort club known as Mickey's, where wealthy men could rent a beautiful boy for the night at $50 a visit. An old acquaintance later told the Brooklyn Eagle he didn't want to do it. But when his illegal residency status was used as a threat, with someone promising to call the police, Valentino relented. And every week, someone came to take him away for the night. It was one of those very clients, producer Norman Carey, who eventually brought Valentino to California and helped him land a role in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the 1921 film that catapulted him to stardom. But at what cost? In a handwritten note discovered after his death, Valentino lamented, "The world calls me their lover, but the first night I lay still, no one kissed me at all." Number 12, Tyrone Power, whose beauty never came for free. In the 1,940 seconds, Tyrone Power was the undisputed face of American cinema. Women adored him, and men envied him. But what the world didn't know is that Power learned a harsh lesson early on. In Hollywood, beauty isn't a gift, it's currency. In 1936, just before signing with 20th Century Fox, Power was invited on a Palm Springs vacation with an older producer, later flagged in FBI files for hosting casting parties disguised as private retreats. A staff member later revealed to journalist William Mann that Power was first asked to try on swimwear. Then, he was asked to try obedience. The very next morning, he was offered a 5-year contract. But his story didn't end there. For years, Power's social calendar was carefully managed by Hollywood's elite. When not on set, his sponsored appearances at clubs like the Brown Derby always carried whispers that he was paying off old debts, not with money, but with his charm. His close friend, actor Cesar Romero, once said, Tyrone knew that to stay where he was, he had to protect the image, even if the cost was never being allowed to tell his own truth. But there were others, like Montgomery Clift, who couldn't maintain that perfect image because they had already given up everything for fame. They lived forever haunted by the nights they were forced to lie down, just to see their name on a casting list. Number 13, Montgomery Clift, the sorrowful eyes of a man who sold his body for a dream. Montgomery Clift rarely smiled for long on camera. His gaze always held a quiet, haunting sadness, as if he didn't quite belong to this world. And perhaps he didn't, because Hollywood was the world where he once sold a piece of himself just to land a supporting role. According to diary entries left by his friend Elizabeth Taylor, Clift once confided, "In my youth, a friend introduced me to a stage director to trade intimacy for a part. When Taylor asked if he regretted it, Clift simply said, 'No.' But every time I remember it, I feel like a part of me died." This was in 1945, long before anyone knew his name. Clift agreed to a private audition at a Bel Air mansion with acclaimed director Joshua Logan, who was supposedly looking for a fresh face. After the session, Clift remained at the mansion for 3 days. An elderly housemaid recalled in Clift, "The untold story, he cried a lot. But when he left, he had a contract in his hand." Even after fame found him, Clift deflected every question about how his career truly began. Once, when asked by Variety, he cryptically answered, "I started in theater, and in a few rooms where no one was watching." He lived his life in loneliness, battled alcoholism, and died with a crooked smile. No one knows what secrets he took to the grave. But a peer of his, once adored by an entire generation of schoolgirls, confessed, "I lay down for someone I didn't love, just to live the life of a role I was never really chosen for." Number 14, Tab Hunter, the teen idol and the relationships that had to remain secret. In the 1,950 seconds, no star outshone the golden glow of Tab Hunter, the bright smile, the chiseled frame, the quintessential All American boy. But behind that idol facade was a secret Hunter was forced to bury for nearly a lifetime. In 1950, at just 19, Hunter was arrested at a gay party in Long Beach, a scandal that should have destroyed his career. But a powerful, unnamed producer bailed him out not with money, but with an exclusive 5-year contract. When asked about the scandal years later, Hunter would only smile faintly and say, "I didn't lose anything." I just had to stay the night with someone I couldn't say no to. Throughout his golden years, Hunter was forced into a series of fake romance contracts with young starlets like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds, all to hide his real relationships. Later, in his memoir, Tab wrote, I wasn't chosen for my acting. I was chosen because I was willing to be quiet and beautiful in the way Hollywood needed me to be. But Tab wasn't alone in living this double life. Behind the camera, our next star was someone else entirely. Number 15, Richard Chamberlain, the beloved TV doctor who lived a double life. As Dr. Kildare in NBC's hit series, Richard Chamberlain was the dreamboat of millions. But behind the scenes, he lived in constant fear of exposure, fear of losing everything if a single intimate photo ever leaked. A former assistant told Hollywood Insider he never left the studio with his lover. All their meetings took place in his private apartment, with the windows always shut, the curtains drawn, and the phone unplugged. Chamberlain was pressured into after hours auditions held past midnight in Beverly Hills, where directors, producers, and even journalists evaluated candidates not on their performance but on their physical compliance. He was once asked to privately engage with a network executive before a new role could be greenlit. When a male co star suggested they go public, Chamberlain coldly replied, if I lose this role because I love you, will you be able to feed me? He wore the mask of the perfect gentleman for 40 years, only daring to admit the truth after he retired. But there were others, like Troy Donahue, who never had the luxury of even considering a mask. Number 16, Troy Donahue, the teen heartthrob and the midnight casting parties. With his golden hair and surfer charm, Troy Donahue was the national heartthrob of the 1,960 seconds. But when the studio lights went out, he didn't go home. He went to invitation only parties where casting didn't happen in front of a camera, but behind closed doors. At one such gathering in 1958 at a Mulholland Drive estate, Donahue was summoned into a private room where director Jack Warner and two wealthy backers were waiting. A server who was present recalled he came out 30 minutes later, his face pale as a sheet. He hadn't been asked to act. He had been asked to let them see what he looked like without his clothes. Shortly after that night, he was offered a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers. But from then on, every role Donahue landed came with a hidden price. In a leaked journal, he wrote, every time I appeared on screen, I had to erase a part of myself. After a few years, there was nothing left but the image they created. Donahue spiraled into addiction, lost everything, and died in solitude in 2001. But at least he had his moment of fame. The next man wasn't even given that choice. He had only one mission: to survive. Number 17, Van Johnson, the boy next door who traded his body for rent. Throughout the 1,940 seconds, Van Johnson was MGM's quintessential boy next door. But in reality, Johnson had once slept on warehouse floors and begged for money just to eat. His fortune changed when director George Cukor spotted him in a cheap diner on Melrose. Cukor said something that brought Van to tears. I don't need you to act, I just need you to behave. That very night, Van was invited to Cukor's estate, where his audition took place in the bedroom. The following morning, Johnson left with a legitimate screen test and a cash-filled envelope with enough rent money for 3 months. Years later, over drinks, Van confessed to a friend, I'm not proud of it, but I didn't want to go back to sleeping on park benches. Here, people don't ask who you are. They just ask, will you comply? And so the boy next door became a star, but not all the stars, no matter how beautiful, could ever escape the shadow of those first nights. They had to trade their bodies simply to survive. Hat teen, George Maharis, the TV hero brought down by a single headline. George Maharis was the golden face of early 60 Seconds television, famed for his role as Buzz Murdoch in Route 66. He was handsome, rugged, and the very picture of masculinity. Maharis captivated women and ignited envy in men, but on a November night in 1967, his entire world came crashing down with one headline in the Los Angeles Times: TV actor arrested in public restroom for indecent conduct. Though the story was buried, court records revealed Maharis was caught in an intimate moment with an undercover LAPD officer in the restroom of the Westwood Hotel. The scandal didn't just cast doubt on his sexuality, it prompted the studios to abandon him overnight. A director who worked with Maharis once said, everyone knew from the start he wasn't cast for his acting talent. He was beautiful and he was obedient. After the scandal, Maharis vanished from the screen. He became a recluse, avoiding interviews and never speaking of that night ever again. 19. John Gavin, the clean cut facade that hid a world of dirty encounters. By the end of the 1,950 seconds, John Gavin was known as the cleanest face in Hollywood. With his perfect looks, military polish, and abundant charm, he was the ideal choice for heroes, officers, and aristocrats. But what the public never saw was the list of strangers. Gavin met well after studio hours, a former Universal Studios limo driver, revealed in a quietly released 1,984 memoir that Gavin was often driven to a Santa Monica apartment at midnight, where men in tuxedos waited. There were no names and no questions. An hour later, he would emerge, blank faced, and simply say, "Take me home. I need a shower." In exchange for these meetings, Gavin secured major roles before scripts were even completed. There were no auditions, no questions asked. As a Universal executive once admitted, he was the perfect mask for the filth we were hiding behind the scenes. But at the very least, Gavin survived. The next star, Ramon Navarro, wasn't nearly so lucky. He died in the very bed that he had once sold his youth and beauty to acquire. 20 Ramon Navarro, the silent film legend who died on a stranger's bed. On the 31st of October 1968, police found Ramon Navarro dead in his Laurel Canyon home. He had been strangled with a telephone cord, his mouth stuffed with tissue amidst a scene of dried blood. His killers were Paul and Tom Ferguson, two young hustlers he had invited over. They brutally tortured him, believing Navarro was hiding a fortune in the house, but the case grew darker. When reporters uncovered a list of special clients, Navarro had entertained from the 1,930 seconds to the 1,950 seconds. It included directors, politicians, and A-list stars. One of them confessed on the witness stand, "I met him when I was 17. He said, 'Just behave and I'll get you in a film.'" And he did. Navarro had built a career by selling himself under assumed names, but even as a legend, he died alone and disgraced, just another body that no one wanted to claim. In contrast, the next star fell into a trap, not of survival, but of love, a love the world refused to accept. And the price he paid was a life lived entirely in the shadows. 21. Farley Granger. The innocent boy and his lover in the dark, Farley Granger rose to fame with Hitchcock's Rope. In 1948, charming audiences with his soft features, dreamy eyes, and gentle demeanor. But beneath that fragile exterior was a life ruled by fear and desire. In 1950, Granger began an all-consuming relationship with screenwriter Arthur Laurents, a man who would control every single step of his career. In his memoir, "Include Me Out," Granger admitted, "Arthur taught me how to love, how to pretend, and how to lie down when I needed to keep a role." Their relationship lasted for over 15 years, yet no one in the industry dared speak its name. Every time Granger landed a new part, the whispers would follow. Who did he sleep with this week? A production assistant was famously fired for joking about it on the set of Strangers on a Train. Through it all, Granger never confirmed and he never denied. In one of his final interviews, he reflected, "I loved, I was used, but I don't regret it because in this world, if you don't let them touch your body, they'll never let you touch the spotlight." 22. Don Murray, the silent face of unwritten deals. Don Murray isn't a name often whispered, in the same breath as the other legends of his era, but he once made Marilyn Monroe blush on screen. In Bus Stop with his dignified demeanor, steady gaze, and quiet charm. To many, Murray was the ultimate old school gentleman. But behind that clean-cut image was a past, filled with transactions that were never written into any script. According to the unpublished memoir of a casting assistant at 20th Century Fox, Don was pressured into using his body. In exchange for his very first film contract, he went into a private audition with a major director. 2 hours later, he emerged pale as a ghost. When I asked if he was okay, he whispered, "I think I just sold my soul to be seen through a lens." Murray never confirmed the story, but he never denied it either. In a 1982 interview, he offered a cryptic remark. In Hollywood, some things are never written into contracts, but everyone knows what they have to do if they want their name on the dotted line. Unlike Murray, the next man wasn't silent. He was America's favorite cowboy, and he served far more dinners than he ever did roles. 23. Guy Madison, the silver screen cowboy who served dinner to the elite. With his perfect teeth and matinee idol looks, Guy Madison was America's ideal man in The Adventures of Wild Bill Hickok. But before he was famous, he was just an unemployed Navy vet scraping by in Los Angeles. And what kept him afloat wasn't the studio system, it was the kitchens of elite mansions. A former employee of a Beverly Hills hotel, where tycoons often booked private dinners, revealed that Guy was hired not just to serve food, but to be part of the decor. Guests would request him to stand shirtless and perfectly still, like a statue, for the first 20 minutes before he disappeared into the host's bedroom. An anonymous director wrote in a memoir, Guy didn't mind. He was gorgeous and understood his role. I once saw him smile as someone handed him a room key, like it was a routine he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Once he achieved stardom, Madison never spoke of those early days, but Hollywood never forgot, especially those who had seen him in hotel bathrooms at 3 in the morning. 24. William Haynes, the man who refused to bow, but once sold his body to survive. In the late 1920 seconds, William Haynes was MGM's most bankable star of romantic comedies, and one of the very few openly gay men in classic Hollywood. But before he could live so authentically, Haynes survived by quietly selling himself to keep both himself and his partner financially afloat. According to a 1933 issue of Variety, when Haynes was caught in a hotel with a young man, he offered no apologies. Instead, he proudly told the press, I love him, I won't give him up. But few knew that early in his career, Haynes worked in secret gentlemen's clubs where entry was by invitation only. A close friend recalled Bill once saying, I don't work there for the money. I work there to be seen, to be introduced, to be chosen. After the scandal, MGM fired him. But Haynes brilliantly reinvented himself as a legendary interior designer. Even so, near the end of his life, he admitted, I don't regret loving, but I do regret having to sell that love just to buy back my career. Not everyone survived with their integrity intact like Haynes. One man didn't just sell his body, he brokered the bodies of an entire generation of young men. In the shadows of Tinseltown, Scotty Bowers operated as the secret pimp to the stars of classic Hollywood. If anyone knew who was sleeping with whom during Hollywood's golden era, it was this former Marine. Bowers became the unofficial pleasure liaison for the entire entertainment industry. His unlikely enterprise began at a humble gas station right on Hollywood Boulevard. From 1946 onward, Scotty wasn't just pumping gas, he was discreetly introducing handsome young men to his VIP clientele. Many of these men were aspiring actors, undiscovered models, or recently discharged servicemen looking for a break. In his 2012 memoir, Full Service, Bowers named names, including the legendary Rock Hudson. Cary Grant and Spencer Tracy were also on his star-studded list of clients. I was just the middleman, he claimed, having allegedly arranged over 1,000 such encounters. His operation spanned 3 decades, and he admitted to personally participating in more than a third of them. They came to me because they had no choice, he explained. They needed roles, they needed rent. They needed to survive. Yet, Scotty was never sued, never caught on tape. When he died in 2019, he took a vault of secrets and names with him to the grave. The secrets of hundreds of icons who laid down in the dark just to stand under Hollywood's bright lights. And so, the silver screen gods who once made millions of hearts flutter turned out to have sold a piece of themselves in the shadows, all for the chance to stand in front of a camera. This raises a lingering question. Has this practice really stopped, or does it continue today, only in a more sophisticated, secretive, and dangerous form? What do you think about the truth that lies behind the spotlight? If you had the choice, would you stay true to yourself? Or would you be willing to trade everything for fame? Leave your thoughts in a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next.